Welcome. Today, we're going somewhere we haven't been before on the Aspire Beyond podcast, into ancient Mayan wisdom and the Mayan sacred calendar. So much of modern suffering today is connected to separation. We as humanity as a whole have become incredibly disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, from nature, from each other, from our ancestors and life itself. So what can ancient Mayan wisdom teach us to remember these connections and heal? Our guest today is Christine Olivia Hernandez, and I've had the opportunity to experience Christine's work personally. She's a Mayan astrologer, a Mayan spiritual guide, a cacao practitioner, and the author of Remember Your Roots and the creator of the Mayan Oracle Deck. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here and share with you. Yay.
Amazing. Yes. So before we get into the Mayan sacred calendar, which we're going to kick it off with, I'd love for you to briefly start with you, Christine. How did you, as a young woman living in a modern world, find yourself reconnecting so deeply with your Mayan roots and ultimately becoming a keeper and a teacher of some of this wisdom?
Yeah. So I like to share that it really begins with the catalyst of my father taking his own life. And this is a really beautiful example, actually, of how time is not linear and how, also our ancestors are always with us. And when they're on the other side, they come to us from a different spiritual perspective. So he took his life actually the same month that I turned 22. So it's quite traumatic at that time. And a week after his passing, he came to me in a dream and he told me that I saved him. And I didn't understand. I saved him. I didn't understand. How could I have saved him? I woke up very much confused and heartbroken because I'm like, but that's not the case. That's not true. And it wasn't until more recently that I fully understood that I have in the healing that I do for myself, that healing ripples into every direction, that ripples backwards and forwards into the lineage and has supported him in so many ways. And so it was this understanding that I'm a healer, right? And him telling me that and like planting the seed within me to understand that I'm that healer for the lineage. And then, I actually had to get into like one of the most toxic relationships to really have one of those bathroom floor moments and realize that I needed to change my life. And that led me to change everything. I went into yoga. Yoga led me to cacao, ceremonial cacao, reconnected me with my heart, reconnected me with my ancestors and with my father once again. So I was introduced to Mayan cacao that was from Guatemala, my father being from Guatemala. And that changed everything really. And that led me down the path of reconnecting to my ancestral wisdom, going to the lands. I didn't have any ancestors or relatives that were alive to go connect with when I would go to Guatemala. I would just go to connect with the ancestors and the land. And from there was introduced to elders and teachers who brought me onto this path of reconnecting to my indigenous roots, my Mayan roots, right? Not just cacao, but with the calendar as well. So that's kind of how I got here.
Okay, great. So let's start our conversation today about the Mayan sacred calendar. What is it? Can you kind of describe it simply as you can?
Yeah. So the Mayan sacred calendar is also known as the Cholki or the Tolkien. And this is our spiritual calendar. This is the calendar that supports us in understanding ourselves and reconnecting to our soul's essence and to spirit. So the spiritual calendar. The Maya created many different calendars. There's over 20 calendars that we know about. We all know about the Maya from 2012, and that's because of the long count calendar that was mapping out 5,125 years in advance, and that was predicting every solstice and equinox for thousands of years, because those are very important times to the Maya. So that's the long count calendar, and that predicts, also, big shifts, right? Also prophecy, right? That was the ending of one era and the beginning of a new era. It was never about the end of the world. It was about a shift and coming into the next era, which is an awakening of consciousness. And that's where we find ourselves now. Then you had the Hob calendar, which is the solar calendar, the agricultural calendar. And then you have like the human calendar and understanding our spiritual past, understanding who we are on a soul level. And this helps us understand what comes easy, the challenges we're going to face, soul's purpose, and how we can be supportive to that collective web. There's an understanding that everything is woven together. And the calendar is actually this perfect reflection of the human in wholeness. It's made up of 260 unique combinations. So 260-day calendar. It brings together 20 nawales, which are energies. You can think of them like archetypes that come together with 13 numbers, and those create the 260 unique combinations and days. And 260 is like the gestation period of a human. The 20 nawals, those energies, they reflect our 20 digits, our fingers, our toes, and then the 13 numbers reflect the 13 joints in the body. And so again, it's kind of this macro to the micro universe within the human.
Wow, that's so well said. That's amazing. So when you talk about, well, how can this apply to me? I'm just thinking of our audience. I had a Mayan chart reading with you a couple months ago, and it was sort of my first doorway into this. What I find is it's amazingly accurate in kind of how to navigate our lives, where we've been, where we're going, bringing in the masculine and feminine energy. And it was profoundly accurate and impactful for me. So I'd love to hear what you bring about when you do a Mayan reading for someone for their own birth chart.
Yeah, it's what you said, right? We go over their cross, their Mayan tree of life, going into the past and sharing with them where they're going into their destiny. We call it eldership as well. And then that balancing of the feminine and the masculine aspects, which represent your more inner side, that's the feminine side, or then the masculine side, that's more physical and outward. But the point of going into the reading is not just to share information. It is a coming into sacred time. And when we come into connection with the Cholki and work with sacred time, you're coming into connection with your soul's essence and with spirit. And so this can be that activation and that support of reclaiming these aspects of ourselves, these powerful gifts that we carry as well, and can be, so healing and so profound and magical, and also very practical. It's like very real. And what I hear oftentimes is that it feels very intimate. It's like the calendar knows you. It's accurate because all of their calendars were incredibly accurate. These were mathematicians, scientists, spiritualists. And there was, again, an understanding the cosmology, the Mayan cosmology is that everything is woven together. And if you live in that way, it's almost hard to understand because we live so differently and so disconnected, or have for so long. But they understood that everything is woven together, and that includes the human, the cosmos, nature, time, and space, like everything. So, yeah.
Yeah. If you take a look at your own reading and you actually have access where people can actually pull up their own Mayan cross, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So on mayancosmology.com, you can look up your mini reading. And with the Mayan sign, you always have a number, and then you have your nawal, that main energy, right? And it usually reflects with an animal. For someone like me, I'm the sun, so that's like what it represents first and foremost. But then the animal is like the macaw. If your tihaj, that would represent the obsidian blade, but the animal is the wolf. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
We talk about this idea of ancient Mayan wisdom, and you can think of it as something as like long, long time ago, which it is, but it's really a living tradition. And it's really like something that we need more now than ever before as humans. And I just love for you to talk about how practical it is for today.
Yes. Oh my God, you're saying there's so much to speak on this because yes, it's a living system and is meant to be worked with on the daily, right? In ancient times, we would have introduced ourselves with our Mayan signs. We would have known everyone's sign from birth. We would have known, okay, today is this energy. If you are born on this day, you carry a particular energy. And yes, that's going to mean that also it includes like the year bearer that you were born under as well as the trecena. And so all these factors impact that Mayan sign and your energy that you carry. But yeah, we would have known that from the get. And that way we would understand each other's essence and support children in that, and also work together in a more beautiful way too. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that this is a time of prophecy. It's been prophesied by many different cultures that there would come a time where the indigenous wisdom would be here to support us in the shift, right? And so there are some Maya that call it the sixth sun that we are in now, which is that new era of consciousness, right? Or the seven generations prophecy, that we're that generation to bring about the changes, right? Or the eagle and the condor. There's so many different prophecies. So this is a time where we're meant to work with the wisdom of the ancients, of the ancestors, and of the indigenous peoples of the Americas to support us in remembering who we are. If we don't know who we are, if we don't feel connected within and whole within us, then can we do that without, right? You were speaking about how we're so disconnected in the beginning of the conversation. We have been for so long. And so, but it does start here. We have to feel that wholeness, that love within us, and understand like the calendar is all within us. All these different archetypes and energies are actually all in us, right? We mentioned how it's like this reflection of wholeness. So a lot of us are actually feeling this energy of actually the jaguar. This year is cat. This year is the deer. We are in the year of the deer. And that represents actually like masculine power. But so many of us are feeling this call. And the deer and the jaguar, they're very relatable. But jaguars is feminine power. And so many of us are feeling that fierce, loving power, right? And also this energy of like being that guardian, that protector that speaks up fiercely with love, but for a cause and for a reason that is connected to the Mother Earth, as well as all sentient beings and teachers. So yeah, again, it is a living system. It's meant to be worked with now. And back in the day, it was actually, used in many different ways and in settings. It was put into the architecture, right? Many people know of the calendar and imagine it as like a monument, but it wasn't this ancient monument that they found and, looks like the calendar round, actually. That is a new concept, and it exists so that you can conceptualize and understand that it is a circle and it moves around and around and it repeats. It was put into the architecture, it was put into codices, and now we can work with it through the Mayan Oracle Deck that was just released a couple months ago. And yeah, that's it right there. and that is a way to work with the energies of every day. So there's a certain energy every single day that you can come into alignment with. And it is a frequency. I say sometimes it's like a flavor that you can feel into and align with. And every day is very different. And because of the Gregorian calendar, we're just, in this distortion. It's a distortion of time that was created by Pope Gregory XIII so that you would pay your taxes. It doesn't care about you, and it isn't true time. So working with the living calendar and true time, you're understanding that there's a flow, and again, working with the cycles and the seasons. But every day is very different. One day might be good for productivity, but Monday and through Friday does not mean that you're always going to feel productive, right? One day might be good for productivity, but the next day might be good for rest, or the next day might be good for creativity, working with your ancestors, or your mental health, or your physical body, or what have you. And so that's the way we can work with it and live more intentionally. If you wake in the morning and you feel into the energy of your every day, it can just support you in living a more intentional life. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I think there's going to be some people who are interested in diving in to explore the Mayan calendar because it's incredible. So I wanted to just transition a little bit, Christine, to your book.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book recently, Remember Your Roots. And I have to say, for anyone who's read The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, it has that flavor of wisdom, ancient wisdom, but it's so much more. I got to be honest, I'm kind of shocked someone as young as you, Christine, could write a book like this. Because like the wisdom is profound. I have a little bookmark in here. I got this from Chichen Itza when I was there. It's an old, ancient Mayan city, which some of you may know about. And so I just love looking. I mean, you could literally open up any page and there is just such wisdom pouring out, but it's not wisdom that's impractical. It's extremely practical for how to live your best life and to connect with life, to connect with Mother Nature, your ancestors, and yourself, your body. And what really is profound to me, Christine, is that you and I have very different backgrounds. We have very different paths that we've traveled. But how is it that this wisdom resonates so deeply in my soul? Just like does yours. And it's because it's human wisdom. This is the book for humanity. That's how I feel.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And it's coming from my heart, my dear. Yeah. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about this book. I mean, what brought you to write this book?
Yeah, the way it started actually was I had a ancestor come to me in a dream and tell me to write a book. And the book was actually all about gratitude first. They were just reminding me that we needed a book to be shared about gratitude and the power of gratitude from the lens of that connection to my Mayan ancestors. And then I brought that to an agent that I had found. And then it shifted though for me to tell a different story, more of my story. So the gratitude book, I mean, gratitude is woven throughout that entire book, absolutely, because it is so important. But like specific gratitude book will come later on. But this book was more important. It made more sense for the times. And what I wanted to remind people was that we're just like the trees. And that's another thing for the Maya. They understood, again, everything is woven together and connected. And just like the trees have incredibly strong roots, they are connected to the unseen through the mycelium network, right? And the roots are the foundation and they're interconnected to everything around them. And for us, our roots are that connection to ancestors. But when we allow ourselves to feel into our roots, we can trace the roots back to understand that we are so much more actually than what we know. Yes, we have relatives and our lineage, and that's actually super important. And there's more. We are connected to everything, and underneath the in the unseen, we are connected to everyone. And our ancestors go back so far back that we have the elementals as our ancestors, our oldest ancestors. And then when you trace your roots back to the furthest, it is spirit that it goes back to and that we are connected to. And so we are these beautiful spiritual beings. And like the trees, we must remember that connection, and that'll allow us to rise up tall, right? Otherwise, we will fall over if we don't have a strong foundation. So, within the book is some of my story, which I think is just so important for us to share our stories, and also the wisdom of the Maya and like my elders' teachings, and so much within it. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. There's a few things that really jumped out at me that I would just love to kind of get your take on. First
Yeah.
off, this idea of connecting with our ancestors. Some of us, it sounds beautiful. And talking about your ancestry lineage, but many of us come from families that carry pain and trauma and unhealthy patterns, as well as beautiful gifts too. But what about those of us who don't really have a connection? Maybe we don't even know our ancestors. And I think you alluded to that for you as well. But how do you connect with your ancestors if you're in that kind of a situation?
Yeah. So, there's so much to say on this. Again, we belong to more than just the relatives that came before us. And so it may start differently for you. It's going to be different for everybody. Some of us may want to connect with the wise and the well, or the unconditionally loving ancestors first and foremost, to support them. And there's many different ways to do that. But it's really important to understand that the gifts that you carry, they come through the lineage from the ancestors that came before you. Just like we carry our great grandmother's noses and facial features, the cheeks and eyes and these things. So too, the gifts that we carry, right, come down through the line. And this work that we're doing, we can be supported if we ask for that support, but we have to ask for them to come in. But they're always there and around us and with us and even supporting us and guiding us. But we must ask for them to come in to really truly be supported and be able to commune with them. And that could be in little ways. It could be so simple as just you inviting them into the kitchen to create things that you love, because if you love it, they probably loved it too. And then when it comes to connecting to ancestors and maybe feeling like in this lifetime with relatives that you had a bad relationship with, you can understand that they're coming to you from a different spiritual perspective. And it's up to you. You don't have to connect to those particular ancestors because you do have wounded ancestors. I don't recommend anybody calling in their wounded ancestors. What I recommend is you calling in the unconditionally loving. So
Mm-hmm.
the work that you do to support your healing, to love yourself, again, it ripples and it does support the wounded ancestors. So that work you do can help them, but you don't have to necessarily, commune with those wounded or connect with the wounded, but know that the work you're doing is supporting them. And yeah, for me, it's fascinating. And I talk about it in the book is like with my father, I didn't get to have that connection with him that I wanted to have. And it ended up being a blessing because I learned later on that he was abusive. And so I was very lucky actually because I didn't get to know him or connect with him that deeply
Mm-hmm.
while he was here. And he was ill equipped to be a father, ill equipped to even be a human and living here. But he did pass on some beautiful gifts. And on the other side, he has supported me in so many beautiful ways. Like, that was the essence that I felt the strongest in the beginning of my journey is him being there. And actually through the crow. The crow would come to me at different times. One time in particular where I was looking for a book launch. I was looking for a bookstore to do my book launch party. And I had one store in mind and I really wanted to do it there. I loved this incredible, it was a cultural center. It was beautiful. And I was looking through my father's things because I was about to move into another place. So we're like putting things away and gathering things. And I find his writings and I find out that his best friend is the owner of that cultural center that I want to have my party at.
Wow.
And it was Tia Chuchas in LA. And so the number's there for Luis, and I just call it up and I'm like, I leave a voice note and I'm like, hi, I'm your best friend's daughter, that they were best friends. And he called me back. And then after the call, he's like, yeah, we'll talk to the store and we would love for you to have your event there. And I go outside for a walk and a crow comes to me. My father's nickname was Crow. A huge crow comes to me and it's playing with me. It's not just there. It is playing with me. I'm walking around and I'm like emotional and just like saying hello. And as I'm walking around and I have a hat on, the crow comes and it hits my hat and then it lands in front of me and then it does it again. It's just like playing with me. And that's just one instance. So yeah, like I said, we can connect with the ancestors in so many different ways and they are coming to us from a different perspective on the other side. So but it's up to you to open and what feels good for you and it may change for you as well.
Okay, that's super helpful. I love your insights on that. So we're talking about connection with ancestors, but one other area that you really dove into the book about connection that I really gravitated towards is connecting to your body. And that's where, I mean, so many of us, I think, in modern day are disconnected from our bodies. And would love to get sort of just a few nuggets from you and thoughts about your insights about the value of connecting to our bodies.
Our body holds so much intelligence and it holds on to stories as well,
Mhm.
but it has wisdom and it has information for us. And so it's really important. Everything that's happening is happening in this body
Yeah.
right now, in this lifetime. So that's where we start within the book, right? Is starting with the body because everything is happening in here. Then it moves into mind, then it moves into connection to soul because we must have alignment with mind, body, spirit, then connection to ancestors, then into the elementals, right? And so there is um a flow of the book that made sense to me. But yeah, the body is so important to connect with. And for me, I'm so in my body that sometimes I'm not even, in my head as much. And so it was a really important part to start with. But yeah, everything is happening here and we need to connect with it and listen to it and also allow for things that are held on to be released in the body. So
Mhm.
one thing, I'd like to just share with people is if you haven't already, having a practice to release because there's so much going on in the world, so much chaos that we're feeling into and grief, sadness, anger, all of these things that we sometimes want to suppress or push away, but we must feel in order to heal.
Yeah.
So that feeling is here in the body. So shaking, the animals in the wild would shake and do shake when they are chased by a predator. And
Mm.
then if they survive, they release it through shaking vigorously to let go of it. And they're not holding on to the trauma of having been chased. They move on and they're done with it. And we too are just like animals and we need to move our bodies much more than we do. We're so sedentary and we're sitting at our deaths and, working so often. It's like, but we need to move. We need to be going on walks, long walks. We need to be sweating. We need to be shaking, and we need to be dancing. Like
Mhm.
more than anything, I think the biggest medicine for us is to dance. Singing and dancing. This is such medicine for the body. But yeah, putting on some music after this, if you're listening to this, you should put on some music and dance in gratitude, welcoming your ancestors. That's another way to connect with the ancestors. Put on some music you think that they would like, or dance how you think that they might dance. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy yourself as you move and flow, and stop judging yourself for needing to look a certain way. Just allow yourself to feel good in that movement. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just the idea of movement, it's a way to release energy. And I do come from a background where you touched upon the mental part. And I
Yeah.
come from a very mental background. I really realize with so much of us in humanity, and especially Western culture, that we are just taught so much to live in our heads. And so I love, you talking about moving our bodies and how powerful that is. And just, it makes us feel alive for one and gets us out of our heads for sure. Do you want to talk a little bit, Christine, about sort of the mental environment that you explore in your book, about creating a positive mental environment?
Yeah, and I talk about how the mind is like a garden, right? And so we have to see what we're planting in our mind, and realize like what we take in through our eyes a lot, right? And what we're hearing and all of that is landing somewhere in the body and in the mind. And it's like we want to be intentional with it. Like, what kind of music are you consuming? Um yeah, as much as food as well, but also what are we consuming with our thoughts, and yeah, through the eyes, and what are we hearing? What are we listening to? All this, because it impacts the body as well. It impacts our mind as well.
I really liked how you were talking about the mind as a garden, and it's not like discounting the mind because the mind is part of us, but really creating a healthy mind, which really everything is connected, right? So healthy
Yeah.
mind, healthy body, all of this. So, I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have to dig into that more, but if you had any other thoughts, that would be great.
Well, one thing I want to say, they don't want people to bypass, right? Because I know I talk about affirmations and things, and it's so important to, yeah, feed your mind with beautiful things. And beauty is a really medicinal thing as well for us, to view beauty, to listen to beautiful music and all of this. And also not to bypass, like if we are feeling grief or sadness or rage, sometimes we need to put on a rock song and listen to rock music and feel that level of grief or anger or rage, and
Mhm.
move our bodies with that music, because the music can help us to bring it up and through. And then from there, it's like, okay, but being intentional with what you're planting in your beautiful garden, right? Of course. But the whole point, like, of the book, like the through line is that gratitude, of becoming the expression of gratitude. Truly, it's like we have to release and make space and let go of the stories and the things, the wounds, the trauma, even in the body, and make space to welcome in what we really want for our lives, and to really feel gratitude for everything, but coming into the expression of gratitude, not just thinking about gratitude or writing about it or conceptualizing it, but like, what does it mean to be the embodiment of gratitude? And that's like the thread again throughout the whole book, is coming into that understanding of matiosh, right? Which matiosh is the ancient word for gratitude, which is deeply felt. It's not just a simple thank you. So yeah.
Yeah, if there is anything that you could take away from the book, it is living in gratitude, no doubt. And, so many times we hear, yes, we're supposed to, be in gratitude, list 3 things you're grateful for. But the way you described it is so much more deep and meaningful, sort of through the Mayan lens, the ancient lens.
Yeah.
And part of this gratitude that you talked about that I'd love to dig into is this idea of reciprocity. They're kind of like sisters.
Yeah.
And you really spoke about that a lot, about just this idea of giving back, from gratitude.
Yeah, I like to say that gratitude is the highest frequency because it's a giving and receiving of love. Simultaneously, when you're feeling gratitude, it's giving and receiving love. There is. So, yeah, gratitude is that it's the cheat code to life and the staple within all indigenous cultures. And it's what kept our ancestors happy. healthy, in harmony, and can support us in truly thriving and also manifesting like the lives we really truly want for ourselves,
Yeah.
magnetizing what it is we want. So it is everything. And the Maya say that it is so important to not just be grateful for the things that we like and love, because that's easy, but to be grateful for the things that are the most challenging, for the hardships, because of what that taught us, right? Because if it wasn't for those hardships, we wouldn't really truly understand our power, our resiliency, and our strength. We also wouldn't understand what it means to be the light. If we hadn't gone through darkness, we really wouldn't know what it means to carry the light and then to be that light in dark times and support others through dark times. So it's really, really important gratitude for all aspects and for all things. And that brings me to say something about ancestors, right? If we have relatives that we have hard relationships with and it can feel difficult to feel gratitude for them, at the very least, be grateful for the life that they gave you, because if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here now. And
Yes.
then that can open you up to at least holding that like the thinnest of threads again
Mm.
for gratitude, just knowing the importance of what, we spoke on gratitude.
That's so beautiful. I love that, Christine. Yeah. And I'd love to kind of now merge into something that's really important for you. And that's this idea of ceremony and cacao ceremonies that you host and just this idea of ceremony, celebration. I would love to kind of get your take on that.
So all of our ancestors were in ceremony regularly, and we know of ceremony. You have your graduation ceremony, the wedding ceremony, so we know of this, and then there are some, but we have lost like the art of initiation, and we
Mm.
actually need a lot more ceremonies, especially for our young men. Women, naturally, we go through an initiation with our bleed, right?
Mm.
And it's every month. So we're always in that process of transformation and opportunity to transform. But for the men, the young men, they actually need ceremony and that opportunity for initiation. But ceremony is simply, I will simply put it, it's sacred space. It's creating sacred space and
Mhm.
opportunity to feel the sacred, to grieve, to celebrate, to pray or play. All these beautiful things can happen within ceremony, but it's again weaving in the sacred. And that's why we can also say, right, life can be a ceremony if you are intentional and you weave in spirit, right? And that intentionality throughout our days. And so we can live in that way and see that everything is actually sacred and an opportunity to be intentional. But yeah, we need more ceremony. It's so important for us. We would heal together, we would cry together, we would pray together all the time. We've lost
Mm.
that. And we're always trying to, one-on-one healings or therapy and these different things. And it wasn't so one-on-one. It was like, again, with community always that we did these things together. So ceremony is so beautiful. And that can look as humble as it wants to look or elaborate. That's just up to you. But the intention is all that matters if it's here from the heart.
That's beautiful. I'd love to touch upon community and just, I think in a lot of ways, community's been really kind of unhealthy. We've been kind of hobbling along and it's partially from disconnection and unhealed wounds and all this kind of stuff. But as we think about moving forward into the future, sort of this new era and how can some of this Mayan wisdom really help us create more healthy, vibrant communities and connection?
With ceremony as an opportunity to come together in community, and it's everything. And like I said, it's like we were meant to heal together, grieve
Mm.
together, celebrate together, and it's vital. It's super important for us to be in community, and that's where we can share our story as well and be seen and also view others, right? In that, it's like acknowledgement, which is really vital and important. There's a really beautiful practice that I recommend to a lot of people to do. This is an indigenous practice with stones.
Uh-huh.
And one stone is you are putting into the stone. This is if you don't have community, okay? For those who are like, I don't have any community, but we can find community now with the internet. But this
Mhm.
is a really powerful practice that you can do where you're being supported by the stones. And so you should for sure feel gratitude to these beautiful stones because everything is also alive, even your rocks and stones. One of the stones you're putting into it an experience, something you want to release and let go of, and you're going to put all that story, you're going to speak it into the rock. And then the other stone is the acknowledgement and the witness, right? So if you're listening to this, this is a beautiful practice that you can do without community right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that stone that you spoke into, you're going to throw the stone into like a river or a lake or a canyon if you must, but a river's the best because it's like flowing. But the other stone you keep, and that's the acknowledgement and that's the witness. But that just reminded me of like why it's so powerful when we are in community and in ceremony together, because it's like we are being witnessed in this beautiful space with other intentional souls,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is so, so beautiful. And everything that you're kind of talking about today really is this idea of making life sacred again. It's just really this invitation because life can be very monotonous and heavy, but there's this magic that we can bring into our lives when we make these connections, whether it's with ourselves or with community, with our guides. And so you're really talking about a way for us to really connect with the magic of being alive at this time.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's just incredible.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we are magical, there's so much magic to feel within our bodies, right? Whether that is bliss, joy, that gratitude, pleasure as well being our birthright. But also there's magic to connect within the unseen, including, the ancestors. And this can begin by just like using your imagination. Like if you have a disconnect and you feel it's really hard to connect with ancestors, many people do feel that. Work with your imagination, because the imagination, when you were a child, you use your imagination to tap into that remembrance. It was so easy to connect back then because we were closer to it. But we can use that imagination to do it once again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Christine. So, in closing, for someone who feels like a longing to reconnect, maybe with themselves or ancestry, nature, and life, where would you invite them to begin? And it could be with some of your work, read the book, or is there just some thoughts that you have to support someone in kind of moving in this direction?
Yeah. I think a beautiful thing to think about, definitely check out Remember Your Roots book for sure.
Yes.
But begin maybe with remembering that you have both the wounded and the wise within you, right? Those ancestors, they're in you, they're part of you, they're always with you. And extend love to all of it because it is in you. A way to open up to that love, a beautiful way to do it is through foods. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give an example of like how I reconnected to my Spanish side of me. I used to ignore that side. Obviously, I'm deeply connected to my Mayan roots through both my Mexican, my Guatemalan sides. But I also have Spanish there too, and Irish, right? I'm a huge mix. But a way that I started to connect with my Spanish side was through foods and realizing that even our Spanish grandmothers were in the kitchen cooking healing meals for their families, right? And that opened me up to realizing like there's love that can be extended there and a gratitude for that. That
Mm-hmm.
kept them alive and that kept them healthy. And we even have healing Spanish grandmothers. And that was really beautiful and opened me up to again, extending love to that part of me because we have both the light and shadow, and everybody does. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It doesn't matter what skin tone, doesn't matter your last name, your background, whatever. We all have light and shadow as we must to be a human, and we must also extend love to all aspects of the self, including the shadow and the darkness that is there. So I would start with that understanding and extending love to everything within you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So I'll put in the show notes how to connect with you, but what is kind of the best way to connect with you?
I think Instagram, and there's a lot of beautiful educational stuff there. So my Instagram is Christine Olivia _. That's ChristineOlivia _
Great. Do you want to just touch upon an upcoming sacred time group that you've got
Oh,
going on?
Yeah, I have a Sacred Time cohort coming up in September 19th, I believe is the date, where we will be gathering so that you can learn how to, read the calendar and come into sacred time for yourself. If you're a healer or a therapist, so you can support your clients in better understanding ourselves in order for us to move into this new paradigm in a good way, in the shift. We must know ourselves. It has to start here. And again, loving all aspects of the self. So yeah, I would love to do a reading for you if you haven't had a reading yet. And you can find that again on Instagram or my website, which is imchristineolivia.com. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Christine, so much for your presence here today and your energy. And I hope that many of you will check out Christine and her work because it's incredible. And definitely buy the book. It's on Amazon. So
Thank you, Christine. Thanks for having
blessings
me.
to you, Christine. And until next time, everybody, stay curious, stay compassionate with yourself and others, and take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.